Hello and welcome to Office Hours. I'm Lou, Senior PM here at Apptentive, and today I'm super excited to be here with Mel, one of my fellow Apptentive PMs. Before we get started, we're going to kick things off with some quick introductions. As I mentioned, my name is Lou. I'm a Senior PM here. I started back in January, but prior to being at Apptentive, I was actually a customer for 5 years, and I've been a developer in a past life as well as an iOS developer. So lots of energy around today's topic. I do have a dog named Burrito who is currently snoring on the couch next to me. So if you hear any snores, it's not me, I promise.
Only sometimes.
Yeah, only sometimes.
Awesome. Well, my name is Mel. I am a product manager here. Lou and I both started at Apptentive in January of this year. So we're coming up on the 1-year mark, which is crazy. We were both previous customers, as Lou mentioned. So just huge fans of Apptentive as a product in particular. And it's just very exciting to be working on it. A couple things about me. I run my own business on the side called Work for Your Beer. It's all about working out, drinking beer, making friends, kind of having that nice little balance between all of those. I perform as an aerialist as my other side gig. And worthy of noting, I also have a food-named dog. I have Pancake, the corgi. He is my only child, and he may or may not bark. He's not really a snorer, but he will bark if anyone comes. So I'd just like to give that as a preface there. But yeah, super excited to be here with you guys today.
Okay, so now that we've covered intros, we're going to take a minute to go through some housekeeping items in case you're new here. And then we'll also cover a quick refresher on who we are and what Apptentive is. And then we'll get into today's topic. And as always, we'll leave the majority of time spent for Q&A. So any questions that you have, feel free to drop them in. So to kick things off with housekeeping, if you're familiar, if you were able to join our last couple of office hours, welcome back. You'll be familiar with the format here. It's almost exactly the same. If you've attended one of our webinars in the past, this is going to be slightly different. The goal of office hours is to be useful for you. So this isn't going to be a long presentation or monologue from us, but more of an open Q&A time. So we'll open it up with some tips and tricks around the specific topic, and then we'll leave the rest of the time for some discussion. Please excuse any technical hiccups that we run into. We also want your feedback at the end of the session to learn what is or wasn't helpful. So please be sure to leave your feedback in that Zoom survey. You can submit questions in the Q&A section in Zoom, or if you're joining us live from LinkedIn, go ahead and submit them in the chat area. We encourage people to ask questions or discuss in the chat section here too. So be sure to select your messages to go to attendees and panelists and not just panelists. We do have the full hour block for y'all, so feel free to pop in and out whenever you'd like. And then finally, we'll be sharing the link to this recording and the slides out later this week via email. Or if you're a current customer, you'll get that in product happy hour tomorrow. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We do want to reiterate that while we're here to answer almost any of your questions, if you're a customer of ours and have something that you need to troubleshoot, we'd recommend reaching out directly to your CSM. They're definitely going to be able to answer your question much better than we would, since they're already familiar with their applications and setup. Okay, so let us know in the chat if that makes sense to y'all. Drop your favorite emojis in. Mine seems to be the little eyeballs these days, so just imagine I'm putting it in there. And with that, it's time to get started. So before we jump in, we just wanted to share a little bit more about us. I know we have quite a few customers here today. Throw your hands up in the chat if you are a current customer. But there are some of you who haven't heard of Apptentive before, so just a brief recap. For those of you who don't know us, we work with some of the world's largest brands. And as you can see, here are just a handful of those that we work with. All of those brands trust us because at our core, Apptentive is a feedback company all about customer love, which is something we embody in almost everything we do. Our voice of the customer solution helps these brands collect and measure customer feedback to improve their customers' experience and ultimately their brand loyalty and relationships. Apptentive helps capture actionable emotions and feedback from the 99% of customers that are typically missed. And most importantly, quickly iterate and turn that feedback into action. And with that, I will throw it over to Mel to talk through the differences between Google Play and the App Store.
All right. So if you are current customers and you're following along with our Product Happy Hour series, you'll know that we've been hitting on this topic quite a bit lately. It's a fun one, I think. There's so many differences between Apple and Google and how things are sorted in their respective app stores. I think this GIF is hilarious, so I had to share it. But before we get into some of those core differences and things that are really, really important when it comes to App Store rankings, I would like to just go over a couple of statistics with you guys because we love data here at Apptentive. And so we've got a bunch of them for you. So why do App Store ratings and reviews matter? So 90% of customers consider star ratings as an essential part of their evaluation of a new app. Think about it. How many times have you gone to the App Store and you've seen that something is a 3 or a 2-star app and you just go, nope, I'm not downloading that. More times than I can count on my front. 79% of customers check those ratings and reviews before downloading that app. So again, like, I think we all are very familiar with that scenario. 53% of consumers check ratings and reviews before updating an app. This is a really interesting one. A lot of people have auto update obviously on already, but if people are manually updating, they are still looking at, hey, should I be continuously updating this app if it's a 2-star app, right? 55% of customers check ratings and reviews before making an in-app transaction. So if they are purchasing something in the app, they are actually going through and checking the ratings and reviews to make sure that it's probably a legitimate purchase, right? 55% of consumers say a 1-star or a 2-star app store rating of a well-known brand's app negatively impacts their view of that brand as a whole. So not only is it impacting the ability for them to actually go through with downloading the app, but it's actually putting a negative brand perception out there as well, which is not good. And on the flip side of that, 71% of consumers say that a 4 or 5-star app store rating positively impacts the view of the brand. So actually, it's interesting because there's a higher percentage of consumers who are saying that, hey, like knowing that you have a 4 or 5-star app, like actually makes me like you better, while 55% are like, it's like impacting you as a whole. But it's kind of interesting to see there's a pretty significant difference in the percentage of consumers who are saying negative versus positive. Any of these statistics surprise you guys? Or does this all feel pretty on par? Feel free to drop any comments that you guys have in the chat. I think that, I don't know, we're data geeks here at Apptentive, so this type of stuff is always really interesting to me. Also, feel free to take a screenshot of this if you guys need this to support any of your initiatives. Again, having data points is really nice. All right. Let's talk ASO, or App Store Optimization. So the obvious goal of ASO is to rank as high as you possibly can in App Store search engines based on specific search terms. This is your cousin to SEO, for those of you who are marketing folks in the audience. This is the specific SEO formula that you have for App Store ratings. So the idea here is that being a higher search result will reduce the cost of acquiring new customers by improving your app's visibility and accelerating your consumer search and decision-making process, especially if you are a lesser known brand. If people are searching for specific terms and your app is able to populate there, that's huge. So there are a variety of elements that help drive your app ranking. The app name, the subtitle that's available, your description, keywords from an iOS side that you're able to drop in, and then visuals and creative assets. So let's talk a little bit about your search engine results page as well, which is the SERP. So the search results from the App Store and Google Play Store display different information. Google Play offers less information. You'll get the app title, the icon, and the rating in a very condensed visual, and it requires a bigger focus on what that actual app title is. On the App Store, though, you have the opportunity to capture customers using photos, videos, your subtitle. So just very different ways of approaching things. And when you think about it, Google is known as a search engine, right? And so the way that they're going to offer up search results is going to be very similar to how they offer up those search results on Google, whereas the App Store and Apple has always been a little bit more focused on those creative elements. So inherently, those differences make sense, but it can be a little bit frustrating or cumbersome as a product manager who is trying to get all of those different items set up in your app stores. So you can see here from the visual, both platforms are very different. As we mentioned, Google on the left-hand side there, those search results are condensed. You have the icon, you have the title, very, very little information. Whereas in the App Store, you have these beautiful graphics that are able to be displayed along with your subtitle, the App Store icon, and your title there. So just a very completely different look and feel. Let's talk about images. So these are obviously super, super important on the iOS side, as those are displaying in the actual SERP. But as you can see on the Google Play Store side as well, you're also going to have images available. Your user is just going to end up drilling down to be able to look at those. So for iOS, the first 3 images that you're dropping in are crucial. Those are the most important things that your user who is searching is going to be able to see. And so making sure that you're hyper-focused on those 3 images is really important. Now, you can see here, Duncan does just an excellent job of connecting their imagery, which is a really lovely and beautiful way to do this. You can also highlight like your top features. And usually what you can see what they're doing in the store here is they're adding text, not just an image of an app screenshot, which I do think is probably like very 5 years ago. But it's really, really expected now that you're highlighting exactly what features, functionality, value proposition your app has and why it's a differentiator. So really cool to see how that kind of interacts and flows on the iOS side and how that's kind of replicated on the Google side once you drill down. But remember, always keep those visuals sharp, concise, keep those blurbs available as well. And you can see here another example of this with Duolingo, difference between iOS and Android as well. Yeah, even just little things like the curved edges on the iOS side versus the squared on the Android side. I always think it's really interesting to have those little differences there. All right, so let's talk keywords. You can search using keywords on the App Store and the Google Play Store, obviously. But the thing that's different here is in the App Store, you can actually list out keywords as you're setting up the app. Whereas in Google, they're using all of the terminology that you're inputting into your description as the normal Google search engine would do. So huge perk for iOS apps because you can be explicit about search terms for which you'd like to appear. You can also, if you want to play the game of putting in your competitors' keywords as well to try and get a little bit of a competitive advantage there, you can do that as well. So just again, another difference between iOS and Android. And then another item that we like to hit on a lot in SEO is backlinks. So backlinks are important for general SEO and can be a relevant factor within the Google Play Store, but they are not a factor in the App Store search algorithm. So if you are trying to get backlinks into the mix with your strategy, definitely going to be seeing a little bit more movement on the Google Play Store side, but not as much as an impact or any impact really on the App Store side as well. And finally, when in doubt, test it out. We are huge fans of A/B testing all things all the time here. And both iOS and Android or App Store and Google Play Store have ways for you to A/B test these types of items. So you can A/B test your image sets. You can A/B test your descriptions. You can go through and set these up directly in your console, which is really, really cool to be able to see. And generally, if you're going for more of a keyword forward strategy, this is a really interesting way to be able to test that. What are people searching for? Where is your description holding up to that and where is it not? So very cool tools that are available for you to do this, to be able to really optimize your app for the search. So I believe that ends the little bit of the educational component of office hours today. It looks like we have some questions coming through. And we
Awesome.
also, oh, go ahead, Lou.
Yeah. So what's next from this content? If you're a customer, reach out to your CSM if you have any really specific questions about your setup. But if you're not a customer, you can choose your own adventure, schedule a demo, or start a free 30-day trial as well to try out our product and see what you think. And then with that, we're going to open things up for questions. If you submitted questions in advance, thank you so much. We super appreciate it. We will always prioritize answering those questions first. So be sure to submit them in advance for our next office hours if you want to jump the line there. And then let's get started with questions. Okay.
It looks like, all right. So, oh, hello. My Alexa is having a time. Okay. All right. It looks like, let's talk about responding in app stores. What's our best practice there? So this is a good lead into our upcoming product happy hour, which is nice. Responding to customers in the App Store and the Google Play Store, in my opinion, is just a very crucial part of your customer engagement strategy. I always recommend having like a set of canned responses. I just usually have them in a Google Doc, and we'll have canned responses for specific things that are coming in, like a generic 1-star review or a good 5-star review, and having a couple of responses there so that you can kind of copy and paste things in, but not make it look like you're copying and pasting the same thing. So the good thing about the Google Play Store is they give you names. So whereas iOS, you have like everyone's weird username, on the Google side, you can actually respond with a personalization to their name, using their name, which is really nice. I always try to do that, especially if it's like a, hey, thanks for the 5-star review, Lou, just to give it that little extra touch. There are also other types of canned responses that I like to use, which is like if I know that there's like a specific feature request, or if there's an area where something is a little bit buggy, like, hey, we're aware of the situation. Thank you for letting us know. We'll update you when the next release goes out. I always recommend going through and doing this, if not daily, weekly. It totally depends on the volume of your reviews that come through. I've had most of my B2C product manager roles have had quite a few reviews coming in. So every morning I would go through and look at my 1-star, 2-star reviews, respond to those. And at the end of the day, I would respond to my 4- and 5-star reviews. 3s I would respond to as well. Don't worry, I don't neglect them. I just didn't prioritize them as much. But highly recommend having a process for that put in place and sticking to it. Lou, anything else on responding directly in app stores?
Yeah, I also think it's really important to respond to the positive feedback as well. And sometimes that just doesn't get prioritized because it doesn't have anything actionable or negative necessarily. But it's such a critical touch point to start building those relationships, especially so your customers know that they're heard and that you're actually listening, and they're more receptive to give you feedback in the future when you go about doing that.
Yes.
The other thing with positive reviews is that it's like one of the few touch points in product where you actually get some positive feedback, because oftentimes when things are going really well, you just don't hear anything at all, and you really only hear about the negative feedback. And so I think that can be like a big morale booster. And I don't know, I've always been, as a mobile product manager, I used to go through and like look at all of my positive mobile reviews just as like oh yay, okay, so like the world is not crumbling, we still have a lot going for us. And it's also good to share those items with the team too, just to kind of help boost morale. So love a good review.
100%. I have like a little feel good folder where I'll like drop things in and share with the team. I think that's a super important point. Definitely a big morale booster. Like, hey guys, we got this. Like, especially when they're like, this is my favorite app ever. And you're like, yeah, it is. Like, yay, we did it. Very cool. All right, let's see here. We've got a couple of questions coming in here. Let's see here. Any of these you want to start with, Lou?
There's one here in the benchmark report. It says that Android ratings are usually lower than iOS. Why is this? Why are there more star ratings for iOS apps than for Android apps? Why are there more reviews for Android apps than iOS apps? So in general, there have always been more reviews on Android apps than on iOS, mostly due to the demographic differences on their customer bases. Android users tend to be younger and much more likely to feel involved in the process. And so because of this, they're also typically more critical and give lower ratings and reviews and also raise their negative feedback faster. But it also plays into the ecosystem of Android as well. There are such a large coverages of different devices across the ecosystem that there's a lot more that can go wrong with Android development. And so when there's more wrong, you just hear about more. And so that's kind of a high level summary of why Android's a little bit different with ratings and reviews. Mel, anything else you want to?
Yeah, so two things on this one. Number one, obviously Android forces you to review if you're rating, whereas iOS, you can just go through and 5-star it and you're done with it. So your like quantity of reviews are almost always going to be significantly higher on the Android side, which is lovely. However, like Lou mentioned, the Android user base tends to be a little bit more critical and a little more honest. So a lot of those times when people are thinking through, how am I going to write this review? They're a lot less like apt to just be like, yes, you get a 5-star. And they're like, you know what? There actually is something that could be a little bit better here. I'm going to give this a 4-star. Or if they are frustrated by something, they will be very, very honest. Blunt is a good word I like to give to our Android users, for sure.
Yeah.
I do think you see that generally across the board, not just with the quantity of reviews, but also with the ratings. You'll usually see a little bit higher of an iOS rating and a little bit lower of an Android rating, almost exclusively, unless you really, really, really have a killer Android app, which again, to Lou's point, that app has to be killing it across so many different device types. So yeah, that's always a fun one. I always just get a kick out of my Android users as a product manager. I am inherently an iOS user, so it is just kind of fun to go through that. That's actually a good question to poll the audience on. How many people are iOS first versus Android first? And do we have any ambidextrous iOS, Android? You're two-phoning it all the time. Would love to hear any thoughts on that in the chat if you guys want to humor me. All right, Randy says he's an Android user for life.
Yeah, I've tried to switch back and forth a couple of times. I actually really loved my Google Pixel, and it was probably the best phone that I ever had. And the only reason I switched back to Apple after that was the Apple Watch. At the time, there was just no great watch solutions, and I think I tried out like almost every single watch available for Android, but that Apple Watch just kills the game.
Love it. All right. If an app is well known, does the impact of keywords rank diminish to where we can't really tweak it further? We have a difficult time assessing the impact of some of our ASO, KW tests, keyword tests, sorry, where we are not sure that any ranking change is directly a result of the ASO efforts. So this is an interesting question, kind of a lot going on there. If the app is well known, people are generally searching the app's name, right? So I was trying to actually look through examples of what we could be reviewing for in this office hours. And one of the keywords that I was thinking through was meditation. Like, what's a good meditation app if I don't know any names of meditation apps going into it? And I do think that there is still, even if your app is the #1 meditation app, if it doesn't have the keyword meditation in it, I do still think there's a fighting chance for ASO in there. So I think it totally depends on the specific scenario, but I will say measuring like the impact, like, hey, was this the thing that actually changed how we're ranking or where we're ranking? That's where those A/B tests come into play. Changing one element at a time to measure that is probably your best way to understand, is this something that's actually driving an impact or is it not? There's also things like seasonality that's going to impact those different keyword searches, just like any other Google or SEO type of search. Lou, did you have any thoughts on this one?
No, I think that's all fairly accurate and definitely something sometimes you just have to put yourself in the consumer's shoes and figure out like, okay, if I am totally new to this concept, how am I going to search it? And usually that's the best way. But I also know Google offers a lot of tools around ASO in general and recommendations for search. And so that can always be helpful too, because ultimately Google is, it's a search engine. So they definitely know how to go about that.
Yeah, that's a really good point too around tools. Obviously, while here at Apptentive, we are very passionate about like increasing your App Store ratings and getting that customer feedback. We are not like a search tool. However, both Google and Apple offer free tools to help with this type of stuff. And so I definitely recommend checking out what is available in your developer consoles for testing these types of things. Google, I think, is always inherently a little bit further ahead just because, again, they are a search engine as well. But iOS does have some good tools available that are free for you to check in on as well. We can, I'll take a task to kind of pull together some of those resources for this follow-up email that goes out to you guys for those free tools, if that's helpful for you.
I've got a question here. Sometimes issues reported in the stores take a while to resolve. What's the best way to communicate with customers in the interim before that happens, if at all? So some things that I've done in the past as a customer of Apptentive was I actually used a survey to dig deeper into issues that were being vaguely reported that we needed a little bit more help tracking down. And so we were able to target customers running into that specific feature and then ask them for more specific detail around what their experience was like and what areas of frustration and pain points they were having. And oftentimes that helped us kind of like flush out what the actual underlying issue was, especially if we didn't have the best ability to be able to reproduce the issue. That was always really helpful. But if you know what the issue is and it's just taking a while because it's tech debt or platform improvements that you're working on, or you're replacing the feature with another iteration, the best way to communicate is using notes, just giving customers the heads up that, hey, we're working on this, we hear you, and this is coming and we'll let you know when it's ready. Also always helps. And it's just one of those critical touch points to build a relationship with those customers and make sure they feel heard so that they're still inclined to give you more feedback in the future. Anything you want to add there, Mel?
No, I think that was perfect.
Sweet. What else we got?
So there's an interesting one here. Curious if you're aware of creative uses for Google custom pages and or iOS App Store custom product pages. I didn't get to dabble with this as a B2C product manager, but I do think that one of the use cases that's really, well, two. One of the use cases that's really interesting for this is using your personas. So being able to create those custom store listings based on which persona you are targeting. I think that is really important to be able to say, hey, if we're going to be creating customized content here, let's make sure that we're hitting on our personas. When you think about your personas, you can go through the exercise of what would this persona be searching? What keywords is this person looking for? And I think that that's a really interesting way to tweak those custom store listings. The other thing too is if you have a global app, you can also customize based on location and go through. And so the customization, you can really toy with whatever you want here, but if you're looking at like specific localized type of content, you can then prioritize what images you're showing based on that part of the world that you're focusing on, or maybe your app based on what location it's in has different feature sets. You can always prioritize those different feature sets. There's a lot that's probably different from the US versus Europe when it comes to how we're displaying things, how we're communicating. So just tweaking that messaging based on location and or your persona is probably going to give you a lot better results and a lot better ways for you to resonate with your own customer base. Lou, anything else you wanted to add there?
Especially when you're fine-tuning persona-based messaging, it's super important to A/B test to make sure your message is landing. So I would just throw in that when you're creating those customized messages or pages, make sure to test them out and make sure that the messaging is landing. Otherwise, you could do more harm than good by trying to tailor the message and, kind of straying from the core messaging around your product.
Yeah, and another thing too here is if you are tracking your marketing efforts from App Store into the rest of your campaign efforts, just make sure that you're using that correct campaign ID and any of those links that you have going out. That's also really important to track from like A to Z here. So that was a good question. I would love to hear, well, I'll dig into that a little bit more too to see if our customers have any good use cases for that, because I think that is a really fun way to A/B test items, but also go through and like really hone in on like, I want to be addressing my customer base in a way that is resonating with them. How do I do that? So whoever wrote that question in, great job. That was a good question.
Yeah, I like it. That could be a fun happy hour topic too.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so someone said, hello, I'm brand new to Apptentive, still have a lot of learning to do, had a follow-up question related to ratings and reviews. Can we reply to App Store reviews through Apptentive? So you actually, both Apple and Google are extremely strict around how you can respond to your reviews. And Lou, correct me if I'm wrong, if anything has changed since I've done this, they can only respond in their console directly to that user base. There's no other connection to be able to do that outside of maybe one or two platforms that are really digging into this, but there still might be some kinks there. We as a product, unfortunately, do not offer that. That it would be amazing if we did. But I will say the thing that we do offer is a way to gather all of that review information and then be able to delineate what type of feedback that you're getting, which that is where tagging comes into play. Super important when you're looking through all of your data and trying to sort through things. That's where our feature of response targeting comes into play. Hey, we heard that, we heard this keyword come in from someone, let's respond to them, reply to them that way. And that's also where all of our notes and items come into play as well as, hey, like we heard this through the App Store. We heard you, here's the new release that has addressed this concern. So I do think that there's a lot of ways that we can like take that data that's coming into Apptentive and close that feedback loop more intentionally. Lou, go ahead and jump in here. I think you might have another perspective too.
Yeah, so I think one of the other things that's really cool about our platform is that you can get the sentiment for all of those reviews. So understanding if it's neutral versus negative or positive, and then also tagging it as well so that you can keep kind of tabs on what the trends are from the reviews. One of the things that I found helpful as a customer, I use the API to pull all those reviews, and then you can see based on those trends, kind of gather your canned responses so that if something comes in for a specific issue, you're able to kind of track the velocity around what's going on and have those answers for the App Store and those responses were ready to go. So that's super helpful. And actually something cool that I saw a customer do recently that I just talked to, I think about a month ago, they're using our new metrics API to pull the reviews, all of the positive reviews into their marketing website so that they can actually show off all of their great reviews at a higher level than just the App Store. So lots of cool options for ratings and reviews, but definitely not something you can respond to today, but definitely something we should look to see if we can do in the future. I think that's a really interesting request.
I love that use case of just saying, hey, we want the 5-star positive sentiment reviews, throw them onto the website. That's great. It's awesome.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh, that's a great way to like surface all of that positive sentiment that you're getting, making sure that's available at an ASO level and not just or a SEO level and not just ASO.
Ooh, this is an interesting question from Randy. My organization is hesitant to use notes to communicate with members who have provided feedback. They think this adds too much friction. What can I do to change their minds so we can close the loop on common issues once they are resolved? We definitely advocate to use notes for that specific instance. I think your best bet is to really tone down your audience and target really, really intentionally to get a base point to understand, hey, these are the folks that have experienced this issue. Let's put it in like a very specific spot during their experience so that we're not targeting the entire customer, entire audience, and then seeing where that plays out. I don't know that you would be able to say this doesn't add friction unless you're getting direct feedback from your customers that it is. But I would say piloting that, like pitching it as a pilot and saying, hey, we're going to look at this really small, narrow set of our audience members who have been very, very, very clear about saying that they want this change. We made the change. We want to close the feedback loop. Here's where we'll present it so it doesn't interrupt their experience at all. Let's test it. Let's make sure that we're not hearing any negative customer feedback because of that. And in fact, you'll probably get positive customer feedback from that, and be able to close that feedback loop with your own, organization to say, hey, we actually have heard like good news about this. I don't know that we've heard any use cases of people being like, I'm mad, you told me you fixed the thing. But Lou, any thoughts there?
Yeah, the best way to go about it is to try it out and get that feedback. But also you can always test out these interactions too. Just create a copy to share internally and target internally, but making sure that you're not targeting at a critical point of functionality. I believe, Randy, you're in the banking space, so don't target right before making a transaction or anything else, but after that instance occurs, or when they're opening a new page that has limited functionality just for viewing accounts or something like that. It's another great touch point to be able to say, hey, we fixed this issue. Or after login, if it's an announcement, once you log into the application, prompt that, hey, we've made a lot of improvements, check out this new feature or anything else. Great way to go about connecting with your audience with a reduced friction as well.
That was a great question. Randy, fill us in on how that goes.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah. And Madeline also dropped in a guide for everyone there as well, that is around closed loop customer feedback. There's probably some good metrics in there if I had to guess. So definitely check that out. All right. Any other questions y'all have? I feel like we hit most of them that have come in thus far.
Mel, do you have any fun app review stories?
Yes. So I think I might have told this on another office hours or a webinar at some point, but previously I was the product manager of the largest beer app in the world. And for those of you who don't know, when folks are using this beer app, they are also drinking beer. And the app reviews that would come in from inebriated folks were hilarious. And sometimes, and honestly, if you want a really good UX testing exercise, get someone drunk and then ask them to use your app, because that we actually got really good UX feedback around, I can't find this, I can't do this, I can't like figure out XYZ. Sometimes it literally was a feature that was like on the main page, and it's like cool if they can't like figure out it's on the homepage, how do we like make that a better experience for them? But I would always get just ridiculous review. I saved a bunch of them in one of my like funny folders that I had where it was just like ridiculous reviews, but I did not port over that, unfortunately. I also would get really nice reviews from my friends that would be like, the product manager here is the best, 5 stars. And I was like, thanks guys. But yeah, just dealing with just inebriated folks in that's such a specific use case. No one else will ever have that unless you're an alcohol app product manager, but I thought it was entertaining. Every single day I was entertained by App Store reviews. So
that's exciting. I definitely don't have anything that exciting. We did have someone who reported in with an issue in I think it was Google. And then they called into support immediately after the survey or the review. And the support person, it was just a configuration issue. So they were able to help them through it really quickly. And then I think within a week, we had a positive review about the support person, like saying how wonderful they are and everything else. And I was just like, oh, warm and fuzzies. I like that.
Yeah.
Definitely
I will say, like, one of my favorite things, like the most satisfying thing as a product manager would be responding to a 1 or 2 or 3 star review, and then seeing them change their review from a 1 or 2 or 3 to a 4 or 5. Because you've either answered their question directly when you're responding to them, or you had a release come out that fixed the issue, or, you know, released the feature that they were into. There's a section that you can go look at these things in both of your consoles. And you can just sort by like ratings that have changed. So seeing the negative go to positive was always really nice. You can also look at positive going negative, which is just another way to kind of keep track of like, hey, what happened here? Like, why are we docking points? But I will say the most satisfying thing is seeing a 1 star go to a 5 star, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah. And taking that one step further too, the love ratio always was like a key indicator for me on like things are going well, things are not going well, because if it even dipped like 2 or 3% after an app release, we knew immediately that like, oh, something went wrong in that version. So we actually had like an app health dashboard that was powered by the Apptentive API and had ratings, reviews, and that love ratio. And I found myself looking more times than not at that love ratio just to understand like customers that were previously did not love the app and then converted. It was always like the warm and fuzzies when people say, oh, they love us. Good.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best.
Yeah. And Apptentive is so good about keeping a pulse on like what's actually happening, like being able to see that in real time, like, hey, we released this and we immediately saw things go up or go down. Like we have to go address what's happening and dissect some of this feedback or launch a survey to understand like, hey, what's happening, what's going on, how can we do better? Also, I have like the classic Apptentive use case, which was like the first B2C app that I worked on. I came into it, had a 2.8 star rating. No one really knew what to do with this app, and they were just like, go fix it to me. And I was like, all right. And the first thing I did, I was like, we don't have any good customer feedback. We just have negative reviews of people who are pissed off. And our user base was older, wealthier, and not necessarily super tech savvy. And so knowing that like was really important going into things, but we implemented Apptentive, and within like 2 weeks, we went from a 2.8 star app to a 4.8 star app on both iOS and Android, and maintained that outside of 4.8 maintained for iOS for 2 years. Android was 4.6. And we mentioned this previously, Android's always slightly lower than iOS. It's just, y'all are more blunt, you Android users. But it was consistent, which was awesome. But that like just being able to boost that, be consistent with it, and then really, really pay attention on the negative reviews that were coming in versus, and to your point, looking at the positive ones, like, hey, we have positive reviews now. Like, that's awesome. Like, let's make sure we're sharing those with the team as a morale booster. But yeah, I feel like I was like a classic case for Apptentive whenever we implemented it.
Yeah, I was too. And we had a white labeled application. So it went to tons of FIs. And one of the things that always was interesting is they'd come in and implement with a really low rating and review. And then after they implemented our application, naturally that would go up. But also our internal stakeholders used to call Apptentive the like easy button for like ratings, reviews, feedback, because we would be able to like literally turn it on. And then all of a sudden the ratings would shoot up. We would get all this feedback that was actually actionable that we could use to improve the application. And it was just always super helpful. But one of the things that I never tapped into as a customer, and I kind of wish I had, was fan signals. So I could actually understand who like was a churn risk or who was a growing fan or anything like that. So I could actually reach out and like tailor more of my communication, especially through surveys and feedback, to those specific audiences. But all good stuff. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, obviously someone had a question earlier was, hey, is this still relevant to this industry? And we do look at a lot of industry benchmarks and all of the data that we report out on with our benchmark review. But the first app that I worked on was an HVAC app, and it was like, you had to use it if you wanted to control your HVAC system remotely. So it was one of those things that people were like, I have to use this, so I'm going to use it. So that's why you'd inherently get a lot of those like really interesting, like tech savvy-ish reviews where it was like, we need to just support them a little bit better. Whereas the second app I work on, the beer app, that was a fun app, right? That wasn't an app that like you had to have to like do anything important in your life, unless I guess you were like a professional beer rater. But that was interesting because it was more of an entertainment side of things, and like being in the entertainment app space, very, very different reviews, rating, ranking than the HVAC world where it's mandatory. So if you guys haven't checked out our benchmark review stuff, it's super, super interesting. We will have a new one coming out in 2023. But lots of really good data there, and it's broken down into industry style stuff too, which is really great.
Yeah, that was always one of my favorite reads that I'd like patiently wait for every year.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Cool. I don't know that we've had any other items come in here. Oh, Charlotte does say 5 stars for the exercise laundry bike in the background. Appreciate that. Yeah. I should use that more as a bike than a coat hanger.
Amazing.
Listen, we're all real here, okay? That's so funny. Well, this has been awesome. I think we're probably done with Q&A at this point. We'll do a little bit more of a wrap up here, and we can go from there. Do we have any other slides here, Lou? Let's see here.
I think just coming up.
Oh,
so let's see here.
Come on, slide master.
Oh no. Okay. Next up, December 14th, we've got seasonality findings, which I'm really excited to talk through. It's something that definitely comes up in conversation here quite frequently, especially this time of the year. So very excited to share all of our thoughts and feelings with you guys, and also see what kind of questions you have.
And we're going to be in person for that one. We'll be together. We're being reunited.
In the same room. Oh my goodness. I cannot wait. Yeah, I'm very excited. And then December 28th, obviously that is right in between some holidays. So we'll likely skip that one due to people being out of office and everything else. But TBD there. We'll let you know how that goes and we'll update you. Anyways, thank you everyone so much for joining today. I think we both had a lot of fun and always love the questions. Feel free to reach out. And as I previously mentioned, if you're a customer, reach out to your CSM. If you're not a customer, choose your adventure. Feel free to schedule a demo or start a free 30-day trial to get into the product and see what it's all about. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.